Welcome back to the advisory deck. Conversations for leaders and business owners, all designed to help them deal with the challenges of 2020 and start the planning into 2021 with some reasonably good thought fodder on board. I'm joined again by my partner in crime, James McGill. How are you, James?
I'm good, Troy. Thank you.
Good to hear. We're in a super funky place here today. Cows, barnyard animals, all kinds of things. And we're joined by Jason Dunstone, who's the Managing Director of Square Holes Market Research. How are you, Jason?
No, I'm pretty good. Thanks, Troy. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. This is one of our first of three concentrated episodes dealing with, I guess, a couple of the key topics that we believe business leaders really, above all else, need to be on top of as they're jumping into 2021. And the topic we thought would be great to come and have a conversation with an expert about is customer insights. So, Jason, the work that you do in market research and understanding customers and communities and I suppose getting to the heart of what makes people tick and what they're thinking about is perfect for this sort of conversation. So tell us, how's 2020 kind of been from a customer researcher perspective?
We're certainly very busy at the moment, and it was quite an interesting year. I'd say about March, April, we had a few projects. Well, I think February was huge, which was great. Coming out of the new year with bushfires, I guess we were kind of cautious about if we're in the world, our clients were in the world of where bushfires impacted them in terms of wanting to do more work, then that might have been positive in terms of work, or not positive in terms of bushfires, but positive in terms of work. But February seemed to have a number of clients wanting to get stuck into insights, and then obviously COVID hit, and everybody knows that sort of mood just dropped. So we've been doing a lot of mind and mood stuff, monitoring kind of mood, and it was really interesting. Often when you do the work that we do, monitoring, survey monitoring and other monitoring, things don't change a huge amount, or they grow steadily over time. It was fascinating to watch how much things just plummeted in March and April, and then just steadily, thankfully, improved in terms of mood. And I think that's sort of the same kind of mood as our clients, that we had some work about to happen March, April, a little bit trepidatious, not sure what was occurring, and rightly so, either paused the work, slowed it down. We still had a good amount of work going on. We had a very busy year last year, and we're possibly sort of, we were certainly down on that, but it was more about stretching out projects. Clients just cautious about not researching at the wrong time. And then we found from about May, it really started ramping up more as people felt. I think there was just a general, in South Australia and broader Australia, just feeling confident that we were going to get out of this. I think certainly in March, April, just that mood, stuff we're tracking, watching clients, they're just feeling really dark. Like there was almost like there was a cliff at the end of the road. We weren't quite sure what that meant. I'd say that as 2020's progressed, more clients maybe seeing either whether it's taking time to kind of pause, but seeing time to either one client's looking at their brand they hadn't really looked at before. How do we do that stronger? They're in a medical space, it's probably not really a big group, but not really sort of a thing that brand is necessarily, or marketing the brand is necessarily a thing that is as common as FMCGs. We've got some other spaces where it was quite dark for a while, and now like things like adventure travel is another client, and they're finding that now's the time when things are flying off the shelf and it's changing and there's a mood. So touch wood, I'm feeling like it's a confident kind of a desire to think for things to move forward. Yeah.
Okay.
Often with market research, I think if you have a repeat clients, they might come and do a check every 12 months or 2 years and ask the same questions so they can get an understanding of how their clients are changing and thinking. Are you seeing the clients now in the last few months asking different questions? Are they looking for different insights, or are they looking to say, okay, now it's September 2020 or October 2020, let's see how people are feeling, how our clients, how our market's feeling, with the same questions from previously? Or is it a whole new world of where are the new opportunities for us?
Yeah, so the work that we will do, I put them into three kind of areas, and one we call it like illuminations, like what's going on out there. One's sort of testing of concepts and ideas, and the third one's about monitoring. So that could be monitoring of Net Promoter Score or customer service, or where the priorities, and then brand. I'd say if they've got monitors that they've established in the previous years, they're still doing those. But I would certainly say that this year a bit more trepidation, a bit more caution that maybe things will be different this year, or their marketing spends are being kind of watched. I'd say there's probably been more of an increase in spending in what the heck is going on. How do we understand what that means for our business moving forward? How do we kind of bring our different parts of our business together? So more of that illumination work than maybe the monitoring.
One of the things we picked up on in a couple of the conversations with business leaders is this idea of, don't make assumptions just because you're the business owner. This is what your market and your community are going to be thinking. Go and find out, go and sort of test. I guess as we're seeing a lot of business leaders feeling pretty befuddled by the whole year and what on earth is going to go on. Your thoughts on what business leaders should really be going out there and testing in terms of community sort of and customer marketplace attitudes and decision-making drivers?
I guess there's different. One is it says that, I guess, say pre-COVID, I think in some sectors it just ticked. It just seemed to work. The model was ticking along and it was operating. Might have not been perfect. I think when things go a bit wobbly, there's that desire to go, well, what's working, what's not working. So I'd say that things like path to purchase, mapping that, see how's the category or how are our customers going through that path from, are they aware of what we can do? Are they researching the category? Where are the blockages online and offline to purchasing? And then that could be in domestic markets, it could be overseas markets, of what's going on. How do we make that smoother? So that's certainly an area we've seen more of. And also, I guess, understanding, how do we, what are new markets we could be exploring when it just feels a bit unsettled? So maybe they might have been domestically focused. Now they're going, we maybe should be expanding into another market that maybe offers us more potential to grow.
Okay.
I'd say in the interest of full disclosure, I've seen firsthand the work that Jason's done. It's probably a few years ago now in a different company, and it was in a market that was an older demographic, and a number of things came back out of that report. But some of the things that were really useful from a marketing and communications point of view were the words and phrases that did appeal to this market segment versus the ones that didn't. And often internally you sit there and you're blind to the assumptions that you have as a marketing department or as an executive, where this is the way we've done it and we think it's worked because we're getting results. And then you get this external feedback and you go, oh, hang on, maybe we're getting results, but the results we're getting are at this level. And if we change some very subtle things, imagery, words, we can really step up. And I think that was what I saw from the work that you did a number of years ago. That was, I think, a really great breakthrough in terms of the value that market research done by an external company can bring. I want to ask you a question in the context of a conversation that Troy and I had last Friday with a client that's been operating in the sort of food space for a number of years, and they've built a really good business. And they were adamant that their clients are prepared to pay what's quite an expensive price point, I think, for their product. And they had no doubt at all that there were lots of clients out there willing to pay this price point for their product, yet their business is plateauing. They're not winning new clients, and they're saying, we haven't got the money for marketing. When you have a conversation like that with a prospective client where they say, well, we know that our price point is good, we know that our product is good, we just don't have enough money for marketing, so therefore why would we bother doing market research? What are one of the two reasons why you'd say to someone, here's why you should do market research, here's why you should need to go and challenge the assumptions that you have internally? What is the key benefit you bring to the table?
I think it's just taking those assumptions out of the equation. I think often within an organisation, the people that we're dealing with are closer to it and have some sense of where there might be blockages. So they might be having challenges pushing that through the board or across the whole team. So things that, say, from a marketing context, they might have gone, our target market is so clearly this narrow target audience. Yeah. And often the work we will do will go, well, yeah, they are, but you know what, not really blokey. It's the females in the relationship are the ones that actually ultimately make that decision. So it's shifting that thinking. It's questioning that going through. And even just so that we did some pricing work over time. We do, but I remember doing some work last year, and people were estimating the price of their product as being well below what it was. And that's not necessarily saying they need to make it cheaper. It's just saying that the target market wasn't seeing the value of it. It was the nature of what the product was that weren't seeing the value. So I guess it communicates where those blockages might be. And one, it might be that they've been so. It's questioning the team. It could be questioning the marketing team. It could be questioning the board. It can go, are we right in our assumptions? And sometimes those assumptions just almost become, particularly in a lot of categories, they hire almost within the category. So it becomes a group think. It becomes confirmation bias. This is the way we've always done it. They're, no offence to an ad agency or the likes, but they'll go, this is who the target audience is because we've got this creative idea. And go, well, maybe that is, maybe it's not. Like it's thinking a bit more strategic about, I guess, ultimately, how can we grow? What are those paths to growth? And I guess that's where research should and can fit.
I suppose the other part to that then is in this year that's so dynamic and has people kind of now jumping at shadows or conversely, digging their heels in out of fear to go, I don't know what the right direction is, so I'll just stay put. I imagine then, with that risk of going in one direction or another, feeling panicky because of all that's happened this year, the need to sit down and go, well, just take a breath and let's actually, before we jump at those shadows, let's actually go and find out just exactly how your community, your customer group, your marketplace are feeling is probably more important than ever, right? Yeah,
and I think often the answer is quite simple. So we'll collect a lot of data. We'll have projects that will have lots of focus groups and lots of influencer interviews and survey data and other data. But when you collect it all together and you rise above it, almost like a helicopter, you can actually sort of like it's a geographic map. You can actually you can start to see the answer. And often, I'd say most of the work we do, whether it's a smaller project or a bigger project, you start to kind of get that really clear idea. This is what the path is moving forward. And it sounds, I guess that's the critical one. And I think in times like this, when I think it's always a little bit uncertain, but when it becomes like a whirlpool, like a hurricane or tornado just rolling around and just no one knows what it is, at least if you kind of look at it and take that deep breath, step away from it, look at some data or some research and look at it properly without any kind of any fear or favour, it kind of often will kind of guide you forward and feel quite calm that the direction forward is positive rather than negative. I think at the moment, it is about that innovation moving forward and how do we create new products, new markets, rather than getting lost in the negativity. I think a lot of businesses where there is really great signs of hope, I'd say within the eye of the tornado that they're probably living in at the moment, it's probably pretty shit. They might be having some cash flow problems. It might not be perfect, even if it looks like things are getting better. So I guess good research data analytics almost finds that simplicity to give them that kind of clear head to move forward. I guess that's the key.
And I think this conversation was sort of built around the thinking of in 2021, as we come out of this year, hopefully the worst of this pandemic's behind us from an Australian perspective, at least, with the vaccines on the horizon. And we started talking about this discussion with Jason, thinking strategic planning sessions often happen earlier in the new year, maybe February, March. And the reason for this conversation was we wanted people to be thinking, whether it's executives, boards, founders, whatever, to be thinking about the benefits of challenging their assumptions and saying, okay, if we're going to plan for the year ahead, let's make sure we don't sit around the kitchen table or boardroom table and just think, well, this is how it's going to be, because we've probably been going for long enough now that people have changed their habits. I want to ask you about this. People have changed their habits. We're in your office today and your team's working from home.
Yeah.
And in Sydney and Melbourne, especially in the last 6 months, there's been a fundamental shift from people working in the office to working at home. And some will want to go back into the office because they prefer it. Others will not want to go back into the office. Buying habits, consumer habits, travel habits, all those things are going to change. If you're thinking with your forward-looking glasses on about 2021, what are the few things you'd say to founders or executives about the changes in behaviours that you're potentially seeing And do you think those changes will stay? Have we been around long enough to travel habits will change domestically, for example? Or do you think Australians are a creature of habit and will come back to where we were before, say, March of 2020? What are your thoughts looking forward?
I guess my line has been that things will change, and I think our attitudes, our behaviours, I think some positive. I even think indirectly around things like COVID, where for the right reason we've been told this is the way we need to behave because this is what you do. Does that make us very compliant? Does that mean that we become more and more compliant moving forward? What does that mean in terms of who we are 3-5 years into the future? Even just how I look at things like from one state to another state, or even within Australia, South Australia, looking at Melbourne, where Melbourne was impacted by COVID. How does that inform our thinking in the years to come? Like in South Australia, having the outbreak that started off in the northern suburbs of Adelaide, how does that inform our thinking of what does that actually mean? I think work from home will certainly change. I think that even changes what does it mean to be an organisation, say in a place like Adelaide or South Australia or Australia. To me, the conversation is we don't need to have all our team in this office, in this city. We can get people from anywhere. I do think there's going to be an opportunity for disruption of organisations willing to allow that freedom to get the best staff to work for us from anywhere. I think that will change. I see a lot of organisations and have conversations, say, with big accounting firms and big groups, big consultancies, saying they all have to come back because it's easy to manage. I think they're fighting a losing battle. I think there's bits that I do. My sense is that the biggest failing would be if we don't take the opportunity that COVID brought to change. And I do sort of worry sometimes that we won't change. So particularly in a place like South Australia, or even in broader Australia, that we largely went out of it pretty quickly. Like the rest of the world has got cases and deaths, and it's horrible. It must be really psychologically hard to deal with that. So therefore, from pain comes innovation, because you just have to get out of it. I think part of my hypothesis is when it's easier, do we just kind of slot back, not necessarily to normal, but to a closer version of normal? Some of the research we collected, the people did change their physical activity and some of their behaviours, and it was a lot of it for the positive. Like we have feedback in some of our mind and mood research about people saying, can't we do this every year? Let's just stop the city, because it's great. We pause, we kind of reflect, which is kind of not realistic. But then things come back and we kind of go back to normal. I kind of generally think that from a business side, from a strategic side, it's not waiting for change to occur. It's creating that change. And it's kind of subtly different. Change doesn't happen because consumers change. Change happens because innovative businesses create that change. And a lot of that could be coming from research or just an intuition to change it. So online shopping, I think like Australian businesses are still generally not that great at online shopping. There's a few, like AlphaBox and Dice is one group that seems to be doing things like online shopping really well. But I'd say a lot aren't. A lot aren't creating a great online shopping experience to change that kind of that dynamic. So I guess that's really understanding, well, where are those pain points? And a great thing about a horrible year like 2020 is the rules change. You can do something, you can play with it. But I see a lot of organisations just waiting for the norm to return again so they can get back to it. And I go, oh, and it just makes my heart sink. I just think it's like for a lot of people, and I think our organisation, our team go, it's a horrible year again, but when there's this disruption and stability, it's actually kind of really kind of exciting. But the worst thing is to go, all right, back to norm, and we don't. And a place like Adelaide or South Australia, we don't go, wow, what can we do to kind of change our cultural fabric, but also kind of see ourselves part of the world? What do we do to change our thinking? I think is a really exciting thing out of all of this.
So that 3 minutes, your summary then, I think, is almost what should be played before somebody sits down and do their strategic planning for 2021, because this pandemic has gone long enough to change behaviours, and what your assumptions were, which might have been spot on 12 months ago about your clients and about your market and about your competitors that often people forget about thinking and comparing to, it's going to be different. Right? And the opportunities that your competitors are going to force through that customers will probably want to take up may not have been there before. So if you've been focused on how do you deal through this and deal with your cash flow issues and you've been very inward looking trying to survive, it's hard now to step up and think, okay, what do we do in the future? That summary, I think, is almost what should be shared and say, you have to change, you have to think, and you have to potentially find a person to come and sit around your table to have that separate conversation. I think it's really valuable.
And I guess the wraparound of that is that while the change continues and the opportunities continue and the rules do continue to change, the one thing that does not change is the need to put customer insights and the customer at the heart of decision making, because that's what the organisation's there for.
Yeah. And often there are fundamental wrongs that need to be made right. So the work we do, there are fundamental wrongs within the way the organisation's doing it, within the category, that need to be made right. And you kind of look and you go, why is this not being fixed? So that's the problem. I guess I look, whether it's doing research or whether it's just the approach organisations have, there's something poetic. I entered 2020 feeling really optimistic. There's something poetic about 2020. That whole idea of having a decade, 2020 to 2030, what are we going to achieve? And in a way, it's kind of poetic that it is so shit. It's all up from here. But if we don't, I kind of look 5 years' time, 10 years' time. So what did you create that year? Oh, we didn't do anything. We just waited for it to come back. Yeah. It just seems a bit sad.
Lost opportunity.
It does.
Jason, for your insights, we can't thank you enough. Incredible stuff, really appreciate it. If you want some help with the human menagerie, that is your marketplace and customers, and to gain some insights in a deeper way, Jason's business are indeed experts in this area. Mate, thank you so much, really appreciate it.
Thanks,
James, for your insights. And as always, thank you so much for joining us on the advisory deck. The next episode, we'll talk about another key insight that we believe all leaders need to be on top of in terms of strategic planning for 2021. Contact details down the bottom here. Thanks for being with me and Betsy on the advisory deck.